Some cards in Yu-Gi-Oh are so powerful, they have been banned for years, but in Master Duel, many of them are still legal. That's because Master Duel isn't the TCG, and it isn't the OCG either. It has its own release schedule, its own card pool, and a best of one format that changes how the game plays. Because of that, the dev team handles the ban list very differently. So in this video, we will go through these cards one by one and see why they are banned everywhere else, but still legal here in Master Duel. Apollousa, Bow of Goddess. First released in 2019 in Rising Rampage, Apollousa is a Link 4 Wind Fairy monster, which requires 2+ monsters with different names except tokens. When it is summoned, its original attack becomes 800 times the number of materials, so if you use 2 monsters, that's 1600 attack. Use 4 and it goes up to 3200. Her effects: 1 per chain. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can make this card lose exactly 800 attack, and if you do, negate the activation. That's why this card is so powerful. Apollousa can negate up to 4 monster effects per turn, which I think is one of the most valuable interruptions in the game, and is also a generic Link monster and doesn't have any locks or restrictions. Apollousa can be played in pretty much any deck that can summon a bunch of free bodies. With how easy she is to summon, Apollousa became a staple for combo decks. Pendulum decks also loved her for her downward pointing arrows. Now, Apollousa does have a lot of downsides though. Apollousa negate Corsair attack, and that's the balancing part. Lose 800 once or twice, and suddenly she's hitting a 1600 or 800 attack. At that point, just about anything can swing over her. In some cases, it would get walked over in battle before negating anything. Also, since its negate is entirely dependent on its attack, cards like Effect Failure, Infinite Impermanence, or even SP Little Knight can completely turn her off. And since it's 1 per chain, your opponent can dodge the negate if they have more than 1 hand trust per chain, like a combination of an Arch and a Nibiru for example. And like most other monsters, it's also vulnerable to board breaker. That's why a single Apollousa isn't enough to win you the game. Still, even with all the weaknesses, there's no denying Apollousa is an incredibly powerful and easy to access monster. Even if you find a way to out Apollousa, you still have to deal with the rest of the board, which probably boosts up another couple disruptions. And if she is summoned with IB Masquerena, she gains Destruction Protection too, which makes her a lot harder to remove. So why was she banned? In the past, few decks could spam 4 monsters for free. It was a manageable card, and once she is outed, a lot of decks can recover due to her material cost. But now that we have a tons of decks that can do that, it becomes a problem. Apollousa became too easy to summon. Having a single completely generic monster that can negate up to 4 monster effects is absolutely insane when the player going second has 6 cards in their hand. She is not an Omni Negate, nor she is a Floodgate like Skill Drain, but she is very generic and difficult to play through unless you open very specific outs. And often, combo decks that could make her also could follow up with multiple other cards. Honestly, I would rather Konami stop giving a generic exotic monster like this. Instead, just give archetypes good post monster that actually align with their themes. If Apollousa disappears, it might even force Konami to make boss monsters for archetypes that currently don't have ones, because right now, people can just make Apollousa instead. Apollousa was banned in the TCG in September 2024 during the Snake Eye Rubel Finsmith era, and the OCG followed in June 2025. So now the big question is, will it be banned in Master Duel? Now, as I said above, Master Duel doesn't follow the TCG or the OCG directly, but for the most part, I think Master Duel ban lists are significantly influenced by the OCG. So the OCG ban is an indicator that they are willing to ban this card at some point in the future. But there also is another factor here, and it's money. Apollousa had a special outer art in Master Duel, available only through random pulls. You can craft it, and a lot of players spend real money of thousands of gems trying to get it. Some people even try to get the royal finish, which is crazy rare. If Konami bans Apollousa outright, they raise a serious backlash from some of those players, especially those who expected her to stay playable. And unlike in the paper format, there's no secondary market here. You can resell your card. Once you spend, you are stuck with what you get, even with 20 UR dust compensation. I think it's nowhere near the cost some players paid chasing that out. Konami undoubtedly gonna piece up some whales with royal out at Apollousa, or just any player who try to spend some extra gem to pull for the out of Apollousa. And yes, there is an argument that whales will always be whales no matter what. If there's no fair way to compensate their players, they might become less willing to spend again in the future, which can hurt their future out sales. So is Apollousa broken? Yeah, of course. She's not unbeatable, but she's too easy to make and too strong in the right decks. And to be honest, I really hope Apollousa will get banned, maybe afterwards. After all, she's banned in both the TCG and the OCG. Next up, we have Knightmare Mermaid. First released in 2018 in Flames of Destruction, Knightmare Mermaid is a Link 1 water-themed monster with 1,000 attack. It needs any Knightmare monster except itself as material. And when it's Link summoned, you can discard one card to special summon one Knightmare monster from your deck. If it's co-linked, you can also draw a card. Also, monsters on the field lose 1,000 attack unless they are co-linked. Now, here's the thing. Most of Knightmare monsters are actually linked monsters themselves. There are only 3 main deck Knightmare monsters, and only one of them, Knightmare Corruptor Iblis, can be easily normal summoned. But in Master Duel, Iblis is actually already banned. So instead, the most common way to summon Knightmare Mermaid is by using one of the linked 2 Knightmare monsters, like Knightmare Phoenix, as they were easier to summon compared to hard drawing main deck Knightmare monsters. These are generic, meaning any 2 monster can make them, making Mermaid easily accessible in many decks, similar to Moon of the Closed Heaven in the Fiendsmith engine. From there, Mermaid can become a bridge into the Orcust engine through Orcust Knightmare, which is one of the reasons why Mermaid is banned in the first place. Here's how that works. First, Mermaid summon Orcust Knightmare from the deck. You would find a way to send it to the grave, like linking it off. Then you can banish it from the graveyard to send one Dark Machine monster from your deck to the graveyard, except itself. With the luck that you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn, except for Dark Monster. You would usually send Orcust Harp Horror, which could banish itself from the grave to summon another Orcust straight from your deck. Meanwhile, Galatea allows you to reset your Orcust monster that are banished in order to set an Orcust spell or trap from your deck, which would usually use on Orcust Crescendo, an Omni-Negate counter trap. And that's not even all. Galatea could go into Dingirisu, which can send one card your opponent controls to the graveyard or attach one of your banished monsters to it as material, while also protecting your field from destruction. All of that from a single mermaid. It might not sound that crazy now when you have the Fiendsmith engine in comparison, but at that time, when you think about it, you can turn any 2 free bodies into Phoenix, then into Mermaid, and now you are on a full Orcust setup. This small engine was so accessible and powerful that during its peak, a lot of the decks that didn't even use dark monsters use the Orcust package. It's no surprise that Mermaid eventually got banned. The OCG banned it in July 2019 and the TCG followed in October 2019. But then, December 2024, Master Duel unbanned it. So what happened? Well, for starters, Knightmare Corruptor Iblis is banned in Master Duel. Iblis has the effect that you cannot special summon except linked monsters, and it has the ability to special summon itself to your opponent's side of the field if it's sent to the graveyard. Iblis used to be an issue in the past since it locks you to link summoning. If Iblis and Mermaid are both legal at the same time, you can turn any 2 monster into a floodgate, which is quite unhealthy. However, due to its floodgate capability and also usage in certain meta decks at the time like yugioh, it was banned in Master Duel in 2024. That already eliminates one way to abuse Mermaid effect. In the OCG and the TCG, Iblis is still legal at 3, so Master Duel avoids that whole issue right away. Also, extra linking, which Knightmare Mermaid used to enable, isn't what it used to be. Like in Master Duel 4, it could be an FTK. Now, monster from the extra deck can go into any main monster though, so it's not nearly as abrasive. More importantly, the Orcust engine just isn't that good anymore. Even before the release of Fiendsmith, the Orcust package has already fallen off in Master Duel. The Dark Lock is a significant disadvantage, and a lot of meta decks just have much better standard lines and don't really want to add more bricks into their deck. And now, Fiendsmith just kinda power grab it. The Fiendsmith line of Moon into Requiem gives you free negate without the dark restriction. Both Mermaid and Moon are links 1 that start the engine of 2 monsters, but it can be said that Fiendsmith just does it much better. You can see that these 2 engines are very similar at how easily they activate. So by that logic, if Konami is fine with keeping Moon and Requiem around, then there's no problem with unbanning Mermaid. So could the OCG and TCG follow suit? Honestly, yes. Orcust has been power grabbed. Fiendsmith can do the same thing, arguably better. The only issue holding Mermaid back is Iblis, and if that ever gets banned in the OCG or the TCG, Mermaid might not be far behind. Next, let's talk about Predaplant Verte Anaconda. Verte is a link 2 Darklands monster with 500 attack. It needs any 2 effect monster to summon and has 2 effects. The first one lets you make any face-up monster on the field dark until the end of the turn. That occasionally matter for some niche plays, like setting Apollousa the Lightsworn Dominion, but let's be real, almost no one is playing Verte for that. The reason this card got banned is all about its second effect. Once per turn, you can pay 2,000 life points to send a normal or quick play spell with fusion or polymerization in its name from your deck to the graveyard. Then, Verte effect becomes that spell effect. For the rest of the turn though, you cannot special summon monster. So why is that broken? Because it completely bypasses the normal fusion restrictions. Fusion is usually considered to be weaker than some of the other mechanics, such as link summoning, since you usually need to have a very specific fusion spell, which are further balanced by the activation cost or archetype-specific restrictions. Verte just ignores all of that, since it only copies the effect of the card. You don't need to draw them, you just dump them straight from the deck and get the full effect. And that's the real problem. Verte can turn any 2 effects monster into an 1-card shortcut to some of the most powerful fusion monsters in the game. This level of generic access to a powerful boss monster that was previously restricted to certain archetypes is the reason why Verte is so powerful. So what are some of the key fusion targets of Verte? The most famous example, Red Eye Fusion. We can summon Red Eye Dark Dragoon, a dark spellcaster fusion monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense by using 2 monsters from your deck. Dragoon is an omni-negate, giving you up to 2 monster destruction on your turn, and while also being untargetable and cannot be destroyed by card effect. Fusion summoning from the deck is a very powerful effect, and to compensate for that, Red Eye Fusion blocks you out summoning that turn. However, Verte can send the fusion spell to the graveyard and copies its effect, letting you bypass the restriction and perform your main combo. And just like that, Verte basically allows you to bring out Red Eye Dark Dragoon with any 2 effects monster on the field. Dragoon was banned in the past in the OCG, but has been unbanned recently in all formats. And while it's still very strong, the bricks required to facilitate Dragoon, Dark Magician, and Red Eye Black Dragon to level 7 normal monster means not every deck is willing to use it because you don't want to draw any of those cards. Then there's Fusion Destiny. This card lets you send Destiny Hero Celestial and Dasher from your deck to summon Destroy Phoenix Enforcer or DBE, a 2500 attack monster that pops a card on both sides of the field as a quick effect, then come back every turn. Unlike Dragoon though, DBE materials, Celestial and Dasher wouldn't just break, but actually do things in the grave. Celestial gives you a free draw 2 if your hand was empty, and Dasher lets you summon a monster from your hand during the draw phase. So even if you drill them, at least you still got something in return. In some fusion focus deck, Verte is used as a backup plan to access fusion spells, such as branded fusion from the deck in case you got interrupted or didn't open combo. You can also send super polymerization to fuse your opponent monsters for something else. So why was Verte banned in the OCG and the TCG? Verte was banned in April 2022 in the OCG and May of the same year in the TCG, and the reasons were pretty obvious. Despite its limitations, locks out summoning, Verte gave any deck access to powerful boss monsters using 2 free bodies, enable degenerate win conditions like DBE and Cyclops with very little setup, while also circumventing fusion spell restrictions, which were a key balancing factor. Even if you wasn't playing a fusion deck, you could still end on the boss monster thanks to Verte, and that level of accessibility make it unhealthy for the format. So why is Verte still legal in Master Duel? Master Duel originally launched with a much smaller card pool than both the OCG and the TCG, and Verte was a part of it, and then it just never got banned. And honestly, nowadays, Verte is just not that scary anymore. The main issue is that many of these best targets have been power crept or fallen out of favor. Dragoon is still strong, but the bricks are really painful to draw. DB is still good, but most decks have moved on to newer cards like Finsmith or even SP Litonite, which don't require as many hard bricks and offer more flexibility. Now, does Verte limit card design? Some argue that Verte limits future card design. After all, if you print a powerful fusion spell using monsters from the deck, Verte can immediately abuse it. That's not an unreasonable concern, but I also think it's a little bit overstated. Verte can only copy normal or quick play spells with fusion or polymerization in its name, while it also has the restriction of summoning for the rest of the turn. Yes, there are very powerful fusion spells that allow fusion summoning from the deck. However, in some of the recent archetypes, I noticed that many of them have a lot of alternative ways to fusion summoning, either through monster effect or contact fusion. And even with their fusion spell, many simply don't even use the word fusion in their name anymore. I think Konami can simply design future spells with more creative names, while also including more archetype restrictions and activation conditions in fusion monsters that can't be easily bypassed, and Verte won't be a problem. So could Verte be unbanned in the TCG or the OCG? Maybe, but I guess probably not for the best. Master Duel shows that Verte can exist without dominating the format, and yes, while many Verte targets are power crept, Dragoon and DB aren't what they used to be. At the same time, decks are already running better engines such as Finsmith, but the core issue is still there. Verte gave any deck access to fusion spell. Verte doesn't do anything on its own. It's basically a consistency tool, but it is a really good card, too good in some cases. And while it's mostly fine now, all it takes is one new broken card and people will complain about Verte again. Next up is Spright Elf. Released in 2022 in Power of the Elements, Spright Elf is a Link 2 Fire Thunder monster with 1400 attacks and requires 2 monsters as material to summon, including a level rank a Link 2 monster. It cannot be used as Link material the turn is Link summoned, and your opponent cannot target monsters it points to with card effect. It has the effect that during the main phase quick effect, you can target one level 2 monster in your graveyard, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can target one ranked or Link 2 monster instead, special summon it. On the surface, its effect seems relatively balanced. It cannot be used as Link material the turn is summoned, its revival effect is hard once per turn, and it only provides targeting protection to the monsters it points to. But this card can give a significant advantage when paired with the right decks, and that's why a lot of decks use this card in their extra deck. So why was Spright Elf so broken? In Spright deck, Elf did everything. As every Spright monster is a level 2, Elf is a reliable extender for the deck. You could revive Spright Blue or Spright Jet to gain card advantage, and it didn't stop there. Elf also worked very well with Totally Awesome. We could actually ban before Spright would even release. During your opponent's turn, you can send Totally Awesome to the graveyard to negate the activation of your opponent's spell drop a monster effect. Then you can bring it back with Elf effect if your opponent controls a monster. And because the total negates is solved once per turn, you effectively get 2 negates. But it wasn't just Spright. Elf also work in Tearlaments, and the interaction is just as powerful. Tearlaments have Merly, a level 2 monster, which mills 3 cards from the deck on its summon. Same story with Diviner of the Herald, which when summoned send Ichizu cards like Cowback or Agido to the grave. By reviving Tearlaments Merly or Diviner of the Herald, players could mill a bunch of cards and triggering fusion summons during the opponent's turn. I remember Elf also worked very well with Cyberstain, which also happens to be a level 2 and has the effect that you can pay 5000 life points, special summon one fusion monster from your extra deck in the attack position. Cyberstain is also currently banned in all formats. Spright Elf can also work with IB Masquerena, which can summon into SP Litonite during your opponent's turns and immediately banish a card. The protection effect also wasn't just some random bonus, it can be used to protect key boss monsters from being targeted. Nowadays, Spright Elf sees relatively niche plays outside Spright deck depending on the format. It would also use in Duel to Iblis block, and this is also the reason why Iblis is currently banned. Or recently, we can see Spright Elf used in Wi-Threads to summon back a level 2 monster like Astella. So why it was banned in the OCG and the TCG? As I said above, Spright Elf was a very powerful card. It was generic and flexible, not archetype lock and easy summon. It can revive monsters monsters on both players' turn, often generating quite a lot of card advantage, while also working very well with cards like Totally Awesome, Merly, and offering targeting protection. In the end, both the OCG and TCG made the decision that Spright Elf were too strong of a card to keep around. Both formats banned Elf in 2023. So why is still legal in Master Duel? As I said above, Master Duel has a different card release schedule compared to the OCG or the TCG, which makes it a completely different format, and Master Duel handle Elf completely differently. Spright Elf was released in Master Duel in February 2023 in the selection pack Spright a Miracle, but unlike in the paper format, Tearlaments hadn't been released yet at that time, and Totally Awesome was already banned before Spright Elf was released. That means the infamous Elf Toad combo never existed in Master Duel. And after Tearlaments became meta, instead of banning Elf, Konami chose to ban Merlin instead. And while still being used in Spright decks or some other decks such as Forest, it never became a dominating factor of the format. So should it be unbanned in the TCG or the OCG? Probably not. Yes, Master Duel has shown that Spright Elf can be kept in check, but only because some of its best partners are banned. In the TCG, Totally Awesome is still legal. In both the OCG and the TCG, Merlin is untouched. That means the same old issues could easily resurface. And like many cards on this list, Spright Elf is just one support away from becoming broken again. All it takes is one new level 2 or link 2 and suddenly Elf is once again breaking the game. It's not about what Elf is doing now, but about what it can do. As a generic link 2 that revives monsters on either player turns, providing protection, Elf simply offers too much. Leaving it banned is probably a safer long-term call. And finally, also in Power of the Elements is Tearlaments Kitkallos, a level 5 Dark Aqua fusion monster that requires a Tearlaments monsters and any Aqua monster as materials. It has 3 very powerful effects. On special summon, you can either add or send a Tearlaments card from your deck to the graveyard. You can target one monster you control, special summon one Tearlaments monster from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, send the targeted monster to the graveyard. And last, if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Each of the effects alone would be good. Altogether, they created one of the most powerful archetypes Yu-Gi-Oh has ever seen. So why Kitkallos was so good? From the moment it was released, Kitkallos became the core engine piece of Tearlaments. The Tearlaments strategy revolves around sending their main deck monsters to the graveyard by a card effect to trigger their effect to fusion summon using materials from the hand, field, or graveyard. That means you can summon Kitkallos very easily on either player's turn as long as you manage to send a Tearlament to the graveyard. When summoned, it essentially guarantees a +1 by adding or muting any tier card, giving you access to combo pieces or triggering fusion summoning directly. And if this +1 wasn't enough, Kitkallos also allows you to summon Tearlament Merly, or later on we can use Tearlament Hashira in your hand or graveyard while sending itself to the graveyard and trigger Kitkallos' own effect to mill 5 more. And since almost every Tearlament card usually has additional effect when they hit the graveyard, this milling can make the deck plus like crazy. To make the matters worse, Kitkallos is a level 5, so you could summon it directly with cards like Instant Fusion, making it a terrifying one-card starter, although this is no longer legal in Master Duel. At its peak, Tearlaments with cards like Ishizu Millers to further their graveyard plays dominated the format to such an extent that they became the so-called Tier 0 deck, clearly stronger than every other deck in the format. And Kitkallos was a very big reason why that is the case, since it effectively did everything at once. Both the OCG and the TCG banned Kitkallos in 2023 after Tearlaments dominated nearly every major tournament. In Master Duel, however, Kitkallos remains completely legal despite the deck Tier 0 reputation. Instead of banning Kitkallos, Master Duel banned Merlin instead. This may seem odd at first, but it makes sense since it significantly weakened the deck ceiling without completely killing it. Banning Merlin was a way to reduce consistency. Without Merlin, the deck has one fewer Tearlaments name. This reduces the odds of milling a Tearlament monster when you need one, and makes interruption much more impactful if you have no extender. It also means that you get fewer fusion opportunities abilities per turn, maxing out at 2 instead of 3, making them even more susceptible to cards like Bestial. At the same time, Merly is a level 2, meaning she connected Tearlaments with powerful engines such as Spright or Diviner of the Herald. For example, Sprite Sprint could send Merly directly from the deck, allowing you to go into fusion if you, for example, get interrupted or just haven't milled yet and need another fusion. Spright Elf could revive Merly or Diviner for more mills. By banning Merly, Konami cuts up these links completely. Still, Kitkallos remains a card whose continual legality ensures that Tearlaments will always remain playable to some degree. Kit approach significantly weakens the deck without outright killing it, giving Kitkallos legal as a way to preserve the Tearlament decks. So will Kitkallos be banned in Master Duel? Probably not. At this point, Tearlaments is no longer a super top tier meta deck in Master Duel. It's still playable, but if you ask me, without Merly and the field spell and several Yugioh cards restricted or banned, I think it will not be good enough to consistently win against other meta decks like Banlist or yugioh for example. Kitkallos is still undeniably powerful, but Master Duel balancing approach has been about removing other cards around her rather than hitting her directly. So banning it would mean they also need to unban a bunch of other cards that got banned. It wouldn't make sense for Konami to just subtly undo all of this. So could Kitkallos be unbanned in the TCG or the OCG? Probably not. As I said above, the ban list in paper format and Master Duel are completely different. Since they choose to hit different cards altogether, it's unreasonable to just subtly unban Kitkallos without changing anything else. Unlike in Master Duel, Merly is still legal in paper formats, and powerful tech cards like Instant Fusion are also available. The TCG even has 3 Tearlaments Kashtira. The deck may be 3 years old, but it's still a strong deck. What killed it was banning Kitkallos, and bringing her back would undo all of that.